Hello, I'm Mike, and this is Will. We are the Tabletop Donkeys.
Hello.
And we're bringing you issue 6 of Warhammer 40,000 Combat Patrol magazine today. This issue came with 5 Barbgaunts, the living weapon platforms of the Tyranids, so we'll be building them up and testing them out in today's game. Looking for the issue first, we first have the build guide for the Barbgaunts. These are pushed together models once again, and they're only about 4 or 5 parts each. They will look all fairly similar once they're gone together, but that's kind of the point of Tyranids, isn't it? And the painting guide, like the other Tyranids, starting off with a base coat of Wraithbone, and then applying Barracknard Burgundy to the armoured carapace parts and the back of the spines. And again, you want to go for multiple thin coats rather than one thick one, because it won't obscure any details that way. And some of them have weird Tyranid growths on their base as well, so make sure to pick those out. And then some more backstory and lore. We have background on the Emperor of Mankind, sometimes called the God Emperor. He is the greatest human to ever live. He created the Space Marines, created the Imperium, the most powerful psychic being in the galaxy, and is actually so powerful that he acts as a beacon in the warp, which is sort of used for fast and light travel in this setting. We'll learn about it in the future. And defying the will of the Emperor is the utmost heresy, the sentence of which is usually death. However, as you can see there, he is a shadow of his former self. Millennia ago, he was betrayed, and the forces of chaos sparked a great war. No doubt we'll learn about that in the future. And he is interred in the Golden Throne, which keeps him alive. In fact, 1,000 psychers need to be sacrificed every day to keep him alive. And if he were to die, then no doubt the Imperium would fall to the various horrors of the galaxy. Speaking of horrors of the galaxy, we have background on hive fleets. So the Tyranids get around the galaxy in massive hive fleets made up of organic ships, which, like the smaller forms, are capable of adapting and capable of surviving the void of space. And sometimes hive fleets will actually fight each other, in which case they can learn and adapt from each other as well, and making the species as a whole even more deadly. It goes over some of the more prominent ones. We have Hive Fleet Leviathan, which is the colour scheme we're going for. They have a particularly strong psychic link between the various forms. Hive Fleet Behemoth is the most vicious and has massive swarms of clawed hunters and large beasts. And Hive Fleet Kraken, which favours more devious tactics and ambushes and some of the more vanguard organisms. Then background on the First Tyrannic War, the first encounter of the Imperium with the Tyranids. Striking out of nowhere, the first Tyranids tore through Imperial space until they were eventually stopped at the home planet of the Ultramarines, Macragge. So there's a massive space battle essentially against the Hive Fleet in orbit, while the Ultramarines of the First Company were able to hold a polar fortress against endless tide of Tyranids, and eventually the entire First Company was wiped out before reinforcements could arrive. But the Tyranids were eventually thrown back, and Macragge was saved, although it took centuries for the Ultramarines to recover. And you can see Minus Calgar there, the Chapter Master of the Ultramarines, leading the defence, and the Swarm Lord, a particularly powerful warrior organism that is actually a supreme battlefield commander as well. Then a battle record for the Barbgaunts. These are essentially living gun turrets almost. So the weapon is a smaller organism that is linked to the larger organism that carries it around. And you can give them background and stuff. Obviously, Tyranids don't really name themselves, but we have had tables that you can give them a title and a name in previous issues. And there is their data sheet. But this is exactly the same as the cards that we got in our previous issue. But now I'll hand you over to Will, where we can see our Barbgaunts in action.
So now we'll be on to our game, and we have the background for it here. So the Space Marines, confronted with a growing number of Tyranids in this abandoned outpost, have decided to adopt a plan where they'll fall back to a defensible position and try and draw the Tyranids in. Unfortunately, the Tyranids have figured this out and have laid some traps and ambushes for the Infernus Marines. So this game will represent one of those. So here we have the scenario live fire operation. On the board, as you can see, in the blue part is where the Space Marines start. We have 5 Infernus Marines, and in the purple part is where our 5 new Barbgaunts start. And the Barbgaunts are trying to destroy the Infernus Marines before they can escape the board. The Space Marines win if 3 or more manage to escape, so therefore if the Tyranids manage to kill 3 or more, then they're obviously going to win. And this issue is basically just covering shooting, so the Barbgaunts have a ranged weapon, which is called a Barb Launcher, and you can see its profile there. Also, the characteristics highlighted in the red box are what we're going to be using. Each barb launcher makes a random number of attacks, d6, and they have a ballistic skill of 4+, which is the equivalent of weapon skill for ranged weapons. That's what rolls they need to hit with, and they're strength 5 with no AP, and they do 1 damage. And we're also going to need the Infernus Marines' toughness, save, and wounds characteristics, which we've used before. So the game starts with the Barbgaunts making a shooting attack. But then after that's concluded, the Space Marines get to move, and they will move one segment on the board towards the other side. But they don't get to make any shooting attacks. They're under attack from an unknown quarter, presumably, and are unable to return fire. So if they get to the edge of the board, their next move will take them off the board, and then they'll win if 3 or more manage to escape, as I said before. But we just repeat this process until there are no Infernus Marines left on the board, and then we'll determine who wins based on the number that managed to escape. So there's a couple of examples here of just following through that process, but it also mentions batch rolling, which is something you can do when you don't have enough dice to roll all the attacks. So for example here, the Barbgaunts in their first shooting managed to roll 25 attacks on their random number, but the magazine only comes with 12 dice, and so if you've only got those, then you'll need to roll some dice multiple times in order to make up to 25. So here's some examples of how you could do that. It's fairly self-explanatory really. And then we have our victory outcomes, which we'll have a look at the end. But then we have our next rules overview in slightly more detail. So this is going over ranged weapons and shooting, so you can see highlighted are the ranged weapons on the Infernus squad datasheet. And looking a bit more closely at them down here, if a model has multiple ranged weapons, it can shoot all of them, unless some of those weapons have the pistol special rule. If some of the weapons have that rule, then you can either shoot all of the pistols or all of the non-pistols. You are allowed to shoot pistols in close combat, rules for which we'll find out a bit later, I imagine. And if a model has multiple ranged weapons, or if you have multiple models in a unit with ranged weapons, you can split the fire of those models and weapons, as shown in this example here. The only thing you cannot do is split the fire from a single weapon. So if this Barbgaunt, for example, manages to roll 5 attacks, it can't put 2 on one unit and 1 on another. It has to shoot the entire weapon at a particular unit. But that's all for this little overview, so we'll get into the game and show you some of that in action. So here we are, and we've managed to get the entire battlefield in shot with the dice tray in the bottom left, because no models need to go there. So you can see the Infernus Marines just above that, and the Barbgaunts down in the bottom. And the game begins with the Barbgaunts shooting.
Yeah, so 5 Barbgaunts, I get 5d6 attacks, so that will be 20.
Yeah. So unlike the Pyroblasters that we've seen before, these are not torrent weapons, so they do have to roll to hit, and Barbgaunts hit on 4s. They have a ballistic skill of 4+.
Yeah, and I'll do 2 batches of 10 to show off batch rolling. So the first batch gets 4 hits, and the second batch gets 4 hits as well. That'll be 8 rolls to wound, needing 3s, because strength 5 versus toughness 4. That will be 4 wounds, no AP, so 3+ saves.
3+ saves for the Infernus Marines. Oh, we failed 2 already, so that will be a Marine down. So they have 2 wounds each. Remember, the Tyranids only need to kill 3 to win the game. But now the Barbgaunts have finished shooting, the Marines will move 1 area, so they will now make it to there, but they're not going to do anything further. They're just going to be shot again.
Yeah, presumably there's a hit or something stopping them from getting to the Barbgaunts. So another 5d6 shots coming in. That'll be 21 this time. So we're doing a batch of 11 and a batch of 10. The first 11 get only 3 hits. Next batch get 3 hits as well. We're actually getting worse. Only 6 hits, wounding on 3s, getting 3.
So we have another 3+ saves. We made all of them this time. So then they get to move another segment. So to endure another 2 rounds of shooting though.
Yeah, another 5d6.
So that's 18 shots this time.
Yeah, 2 batches of 9. First batch, that's a bit better. That's 8 hits out of 9. Second batch is 7, so we've got our iron now. 15 hits, I'll do a batch of 8 and a batch of 7. First batch get 5 wounds. Second batch gets 5 wounds as well, so that's 10 wounds.
10 saves to make this time. We have failed 3, so another Marine will die and another one will be injured. So the Space Marines can still win, but there's only 1 wound that the Tyranids need to do. But they have to do it in this shooting phase because the Marines are nearly off the board.
So final round of shots is 17. First batch get 5 hits. Second batch 7 hits. So that's 12 hits. Use all my dice. I'm looking for 3s. It's 4 failures, so that'll be 8 wounds.
So the Marines need to pass all of the saves, otherwise that guy will die. Oh no, we failed 2, so the injured one will die and another one will take a wound. So the Space Marines will now escape the board, but only 2 of them make it out, which means this is a Tyranid victory in this one. So we'll have another go and see if the Space Marines can survive a little bit better. So we set up again, and well, the same procedure as before, Tyranid to get to shoot.
Yeah, so 5d6. Oh, they're still rolling pretty well. 20 shots. So 2 batches of 10. 6 hits from the first batch. And 3 from the second batch, so that's only 9. Looking for 3s. 7 wounds.
7 3+ saves. Failed 3, so we'll lose a Marine and then somebody is wounded already. And then we move up a space.
5d6 shots. Oh, there we go. That's the first poor round in a while. 13 shots. So I'll just roll 12 and then roll an extra. Re-roll one. So only 7 hits. And looking for 3s. So that's 5 wounds.
3s to save. Failed 2 though, so wound transfers. One guy's dead. Then we move up another square.
And 22 shots. 2 batches of 11. 9 hits from the first batch. And 5 hits from the second batch for 14 overall. So first 12. 2 more. Gets another one, so that's 7 wounds.
7 more saves. Oh, 3 fails, so yeah, that guy will die, and it's leading just the sergeant. So he moves up. He's obviously lost, but let's see if he can make it out at all.
And 25 shots at the sergeant. So we'll have to do 2 batches of 12 and a single. So first batch, second batch, 14, and the last one misses. So 14 hits, 5 wounds from the first batch, and 4 from the second batch. So 9 wounds on the sergeant.
Can he make his saves? No, he's failed. Oh, he's failed 6 of them actually, so completely obliterated by that last salvo there. But anyway, I think you pretty much get the idea for this game, and I don't think there's much more to be gained by playing it again. So we'll recap that now and give you our thoughts. So that was the game for issue 6 of Warhammer 40,000 Combat Patrol magazine. Well, how did you think that went?
Well, it's a bit charitable to call it a game, to be honest. It is still a tutorial. I guess it is a little bit fun when you just get to shoot at your opponent and they don't get to fight back. It does go to show that even though Space Marines have very good armour, if you just drown them in wounds, they will eventually fail and you'll kill them off. But I imagine if you were allowed to shoot back, then it would be a much closer game. I mean, it really is just to learn using ballistic skill to shoot. Although I think I probably rolled above average for a number of hits.
Yeah, this game essentially is entirely random. Perhaps if I have time, I'll try and figure out if on average the Space Marines should escape, because yeah, I think you did roll above average for shots almost every time.
And I think I did roll poorly for hits for the first game for the first couple of rounds, but hitting on 4s it does tend to get a bit swingy, and wounding on 3s is pretty good.
Yeah, and 3+ saves are usually quite good, but though I did have a couple of shocking attempts there as well. So,
and I guess it is nice to learn that batch rolling is a thing and how to do it, and I would say it can end up being quicker than just rolling a massive batch of dice, because it's a lot easier to see the results. But there is that primal urge to just roll a big bucket of d6 and see what happens. But
yeah, typically even if you do have enough dice, you often will want to roll things in batches just to make life a little bit easier to count. But with the 12 dice you get with this collection, you can do everything.
Yeah, and I kind of like the Barbgaunt models. I guess from a sort of universe standpoint, it does seem a bit odd that this is something that the Tyranids would create, because they're supposed to be sort of adapted organisms. I guess it's meant to be something that is basically a gaunt, but there's a little parasite on its back controlling it and the weapon. I'm not really sure why you wouldn't just create a single creature that controls the weapon. Maybe it's something that had to be adapted quickly. And they're super easy to put together. They're only about 4 to 6 parts, something like that. They do end up looking very similar though, unfortunately, with the same pose. A little bit of a pain to paint with the colour scheme I went for. No doubt I'll regret that by the end of the collection. Luckily, it's not the whole collection. It's only a combat patrol I have to paint like that. I can't say anything as to how good they are on actual tabletop. I haven't used them and I haven't seen any battle ports with them used, but probably better off against more lighter infantry or big hordes rather than Space Marines. But it does seem like they can work against Space Marines, at least against Infernus Marines at the very least. Yeah. And actually, we'll probably talk about it once we get to use it, but their special rule is actually to make them a nice support unit. But anyway, I think that'll be it for this video and this episode, so let us know what you thought in the comments below. If you liked it, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Let us know how you've been getting on if you've been playing these games yourself. We've been the Tabletop Donkeys, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.